Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. I'm Deborah Neal Baker, and I am here with Spilling Tea, which is sponsored by Serious Business. And today, we have one of our kind of like favorite relationships, and that is with Seth Mattison. He spoke at Serious Business a couple years ago, and then he was with us at our first virtual Serious Business a couple months ago. And he's also, we always like to engage people outside of our industry because of their perspective, and they bring a different experience. And the great thing about Seth now is that he's very intimate and knowledgeable about our industry specifically, and can give us a lot of insight around other industries. And he came to us, and I just remember this, Seth, is that I remembered that we were supposed to have Peter Sheehan that year, Serious Business, and for some reason he couldn't do it. And he recommended you. And Peter Sheehan is a futurist, and I'm going to kind of give you the stage with this question because you tend to be a futurist as well because you do all this research about our relationship with the workplace. And so where we are right now, what do you see as our near future?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, it's so fun to see you, and thank you for the opportunity to get to come and spill some tea together. It cracks me up that that was Pete Sheehan. Peter is actually a dear friend of mine now, and I can't tell you how many clients that we've shared, or I was going to speak and he spoke, or we follow each other. So I actually had forgotten that was the situation. I'm going to text him after this and tell him how much I appreciate it because this has turned into a really important relationship for me, both with you and the industry. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. As it relates to what we're seeing with the future, to me, it's one of the most, while it's challenging and it's been difficult and painful, and I feel all of that, my business got absolutely, totally flipped upside down last year. I lost my father-in-law to COVID. Like, I get all of the pain completely. But at the same time, I sit here today and I could not be more excited about the future. And I think as entrepreneurs and business owners, it's a once in a generation opportunity to totally reevaluate and reimagine our businesses. Right? We get to just like step back. This has been a catalyst to rethink how we do things. Our consumer behaviors are changing. We had innovation forced upon us. And so, for everyone, regardless of what industry you're in and the business you're doing and the clients you're serving, you get to step back and say, how do I want this to look and feel moving forward? And there is no rule book. And I will tell you, there is not one single leader. And I'll give you a lineup of just who I was with this week. The heads of CVS Health, right? We've got a big event with them. PepsiCo Latin America, one of the biggest health insurers in the world, and Edwards Life Science, which is one of the biggest, medical device companies in the world. So we got these leaders that are like at a global level, and even they are not 100% sure about the future. So there is no one who's like got it all figured out, knows exactly what the next 6 to 12 months is going to look like. And so what that means for all of us is we all have to have the courage to confidently step forward into this unknown world and trust ourselves that we will be able to figure it out. But along the way, you need to know who you are. You need to know what you value. You've got to start to fight for what you want that future vision of your operation to look and feel like. What do we want the salon experience and the beauty industry to be and feel and be about in the future? You get to reimagine it now. And the people who take advantage of the moment will be out front of this versus those who sit back and react and hope it goes back to the way it was. We're not going back to the way it was.
No, we're not. No, we're not. And it's funny you say, because I do think that, certainty or perceived certainty really gets you kind of stuck. You kind of get stuck in the status quo, and you don't really, your creativity and innovation can kind of just wane because, oh, you're so certain of everything. And uncertainty definitely shifts all that. And it does, I think it increases our energy.
I completely agree. I think
Yeah.
certainty is a fabulous word to talk about because while we might not have certainty about what's swirling around out there in the world, what I have absolute certainty in is my capacity to meet the moment with confidence. And the more I anchor into that, Tony Robbins has a great saying. He says, the most certain person in the room always wins. And I love that. Every time I get scared and I go into an environment with, really big, smart people, I anchor into that idea of I don't have to have all the answers. It's not about hubris, but it's about certainty of trusting and knowing who you are and your gut and your ability to keep moving forward. That's what gets you through, at least
Yeah.
partially.
Yeah. And it is all kind of a paradox, but we have to be certain, and we're dealing with uncertainty. And that's just, so the people that are listening and watching, a lot of them are salon owners, I'm assuming. And without sounding like the elder that I am, and I don't want to refer to, this younger generation, because I'm not judging. I know that all of us, because we've got this multi-generational dynamic going on, what do you see? Because I know as a business owner myself is learning and being open and navigating the dynamics of the youngest generation in our business. And then
Yes.
we're dealing with hairdressers that are creatives. So what is your insight on how we, and I say we, the young generation and all of the middle and the elders, how do we have all of this work?
Yeah. So one of the most important things is about having a curiosity and a desire to want to understand each other. If we at least start from that place of like, I'm curious about why you see the world the way you do and through that lens. And while maybe I don't agree with all of it, in my understanding, it helps us coexist more effectively. When we talk about generational theory and generational dynamics, really what the core of that research is about is this idea that the events and conditions that happen during our formative years, which are our pre-teen, teen years, think from 10 to 20, the events that happen then, they are formulating and shaping our values, our views, and our perspective on the world. And so if we think about for this new generation, that's emerging right now, Gen Z, born between roughly 1996 and 2010, think about what they have grown up in the wake of. If they were old enough in 2008 and 9, many of them who had older siblings, to watch their millennial siblings get crushed with the collapse of 2008 and 9 and the economy being terrible and their older siblings having, 4-year, $100,000 college educations and not being able to get a job or needing to work at Starbucks and still living at home, they saw that. And then now they have watched over the past 10 years the explosion of digital tools that allow them to be able, essentially the barriers to entry to get into the game, to create, to have a voice. You talk to a 12-year-old today and you ask them what they want to do, and they're like, I want to be a TikTok star, because I know people who make $1 million. And so they're naturally creative, they're naturally entrepreneurial, and they have no sense of this idea that you would come into an organization and need to sort of pay your dues and wait your turn and earn the right to be able to contribute and try new things and bring new ideas to the table. And so part of what I try to do, and we've got a couple of young interns on the team, is I know that they give me clues about where the world is moving next. It's like, who was on TikTok 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago? It is the teenagers, the kids, and who's on it now? Everyone's on it now. Mom's on it now making videos. Grandma's on it making videos. But who was there first? So I always think of my young talent as they're the canary in the coal mine. They give me clues about where the world's going to go next. And so when I see their behavior or they're encouraging me to look at something, I don't have to immediately blow up my business or our model or the way we do things, how I maybe reimagine the salon space, the technology that we use with our clients. But I'm starting to think, okay, that's an early indicator. And the
Mm-hmm.
chances are in the next 6 to 12 months, more of my clients across all generations are going to start to embrace that, because the truth is there's starting to be digital parity across the generations, right? Just about everybody is using mobile devices, but the youth give us clues about what we're going to capitalize on first. So I want to tap into them as a resource. And then hopefully I'm attracting, humble, hungry young people that also recognize, when we offer up mentorship opportunities and chances for them to learn and grow, that they really take advantage of it. But it starts with curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, our industry being kind of unique because, we have to physically touch people. So there
Absolutely.
is no real, that whole idea of social distancing in our businesses as we start to open up, more. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like in Louisiana, where we are, we're in phase 3, and it really doesn't mean much to our salons because there's still a 6-foot social distancing. So it really doesn't allow us to bring more people into the space
Sure.
right now.
Sure.
And the other thing that we've had is that we've had, a lot of us could work remotely. Hairdressers can't really work remotely.
That's right. That's
And
right.
and
Everybody's got to be there.
yeah. So there's still balancing that and trying to figure, because you still have people that are, they're ready to go and be, not wear a mask and do,
It is
and
across the board.
I know. And then we've got our neighbors in Texas and Mississippi that just opened everything up.
All eyes are on those states, and
I know. It's a speaking of curious, I'm always just curious about what has us be, forget about politics, but our thinking and how different our thinking is, even like from state to state.
It's a fascinating discussion of where we're consuming information today, and that's part of the challenge. Is we are inundated with so much information from so many different sources, and pretty much anyone can find research and data to back up their perspective, that it can leave you feeling overwhelmed of who do we believe. And there's an element of some skepticism, I think, some real and some justified skepticism that exists across generations of like, I don't know if I believe what you're saying. The intentions behind it are 100% valid and true. And so you're looking for enough, I don't know, certainty from some source. I'm such a big fan of Dr. Zach Bush, and I know I think you almost had him. Maybe we'll be able to get him at future events, but he's so well researched. He's a true scientist, and yet he's able to articulate and talk about what is happening in this dynamic right now, and things that have influenced the virus itself and the efficacy of masks in a sort of non-emotional way. And I just think it's so important that we can't not stop asking the questions. We need to keep asking questions. We need to keep looking at the research and have open dialogues without sort of getting into a name-calling match. Yeah. We'll see what happens in Texas.
Yeah, you would think that. I agree. I mean, completely with your, what you've just shared. And I would say, yes, we need to question everything. I think we need to question everything always. And let's question everything and do what we can. Do what we can for the good of the whole. And I guess that's always where it gets kind of, sticky around, just like wearing a mask. I mean, whether the mask really, it makes a difference, how much of a difference, but what is the deal with just like wear a mask?
Well, I saw a doctor who recently came on and made a comment about that. He's like, I know what the research shows around a regular cloth mask and the degree by which, essentially a chain link fence, if I throw sand through it, yes, it's going to block some amount of the sand. If you're not wearing an N95 or higher surgical mask, it's not doing a whole lot, but he's like, I still choose to wear a mask because what it is signaling to the people around me that I care about your overall well-being, even if I know that it really doesn't to
Right.
that extent.
Yes. Well, you talked about the things, all of the like the silver lining around 2020. Uh, so, what was the most surprising thing for you when you look at the world and business and people in 2020? What absolutely surprised you about the dynamics of 2020?
I think what it was is that I'll go back to sort of my statement before talking about what I see happening in conversations inside these massive organizations is it forced conversations, it forced innovation, it forced flexibility upon people that were dead set that the way they had done things was going to be the way they'd continue to do it moving forward. And I'll give you a specific example. There's so many organizations we worked with that were just like, they did not allow work from home. There was no remote working. You needed to physically be present. And they were always set up that way. And they had no intention of going remote. And COVID forced them into that environment. And now they're a year into it. And they've settled into this place of like, this actually is working. Yes, people are there. It's not working perfectly in its current form because people are overworked, right? We know from research, people are working upwards of 2 to 3 hours longer when they're home. And even, for our salon clients, it's like you're in the salon. It's difficult to unplug, especially if you're the owner operator who comes back home with you. But the fact that in many of these environments, people were forced to change and do things they never thought that they would ever do before. And so when that happens to you, it makes you reevaluate everything. It's like if that was possible and I didn't think it was possible, what else is available to me? What other hard and fast rules have we been holding on to that are not necessary? And so it's a great moment of questioning and reimagining what's next. That to me,
Yeah,
and
I believe that you had
that's
said, I think that you had said, even with your research a few years ago, before the pandemic, and when you did serious business before, that there was this, your research showed you, what this, new generation wants is more flexibility. So
yeah.
this really, accelerated the things that people wanted.
And I would say everyone wanted flexibility. I don't know a single, generational cohort that when offered wouldn't have wanted more flexibility. It was just, a younger generation at that age and growing up with these devices had the ability to sort of demand it a little bit more, had the expectation for it a little bit more. But once it was in place, as we're talking to people now, everyone is appreciating that. Everyone wants it.
So when you think, we're talking about the younger generation, what else do you see from your research that they really is a value of theirs, and it's really important that we, as the older, more, the elders, what is it we really need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, they're growing up definitely in this era of activism, and this idea of like who you say you are as an organization, as a business, it really does matter, and it can't just be lip service. And so, whether that's women's issues, it's diversity issues, you go down the line, they are demanding that the brands that they support and the organizations, the businesses that they work in, that we're not just paying lip service to these values and these things that we say are important. Actions speak louder than words, and they are dictating that by their dollars, where they spend them, and ultimately, it will be about where they decide they want to work. And so, it goes back to that idea of, in order to move with certainty into the future, you have to be really clear about who you are and what you want. You have to know your values, and being able to anchor into those and communicate those as a business owner, to create a culture that represents that, to be active in your community. And it's a fine line, because some of these topics, they can be choppy waters to enter into, especially in the digital space. But I think we're all being forced to draw some lines in the sand today, and the
Yeah.
younger generation is watching.
Well, speaking of the digital world and its continual unfolding and evolution, um, I'm curious to know what you think about, it's kind of the new hot social platform, and that is Clubhouse. you know,
Mm, yes,
what are your thoughts about Clubhouse and how it's? Are you
it's
on
interesting.
Clubhouse?
I am on Clubhouse. I, was not an early adopter. I think I came on in December. The big wave sort of happened in the last 2 or 3 months. It's interesting to me when I first started to observe it, the rooms that I was in, it felt like, I don't know, it was a lot of sort of, I don't know, people just either trying to one up each other, or it was like, we're going to invite and sort of invite up the cool kids, and the cool kids are up here and everybody should follow us. And I just, I wasn't exactly certain about it, but what I'm seeing now is the power, and that is the power of essentially accessing, creating small rooms,
Yeah.
and finding your tribe and finding real community. In the beginning, it was just a couple of massive big groups, but now you go on there and you can find a room on just about every single topic, and you can find your group, you can find your tribe, and really feel like these are my people and I can learn, and there's interesting subjects that are taking place. I find I get, in my medium amount of experience on the platform, I get way more value out of the small rooms than the rooms with a couple hundred people or 1,000 people. And it's like, oh, there's someone famous in there, and that's fine. But I do think there's some real potential for all of us there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think what it does, for me, because it's an audio format, is that the hint is about listening,
Yes.
about listening to each other. Yet it's pretty obvious that a lot of people like to hear themselves talk.
That's exactly right. One of my favorite comments is like, just to build on that, just to add on, and it's
Yeah,
just like this one-up game of, versus, you are right, and that's why, to be honest, I've spent 95% of my time has just been listening. And it is a great place to observe and hear and learn. And I've taken some great nuggets that have helped me with some of the research that we're doing. So it'll be interesting to watch as it continues to unfold. But I would encourage everyone, like all of these tools, don't be afraid of them. Jump in, explore, and observe and see and think and watch. How might we be able to leverage and use this either personally or for the business?
yeah. As long as you don't get it, it can be a little, overwhelming, or it's like there's so many formats and there's so many ways to connect. It's like, oh my gosh,
Totally,
it's like
totally agree. Totally and completely
it's like
agree.
everything else, though. How do we do this in moderation?
Completely.
Moderation is always our issue, isn't it?
Moderation is the game, and you have to remember a lot. These tools have been designed to suck us in,
Yeah.
right? Deep science rooted in there of like, how do we capture your attention, understanding how the brain works, getting the dopamine release. If you're not careful, you can become addicted to these. That, as a side note though, but you are right. It's almost impossible on an individual level to be proficient and active across all of them. You sort of pick your spots. And I always think about, is this feeding me the way I would best serve me? Me being on Clubhouse for 30 minutes versus me reading for 30 minutes, something that I identified in a subject and an author that I highly respect. Is that the best use? To be honest, I've been using Clubhouse more in the in-between time. I go for a run, I'm driving, boom, I can put it in because I'm doing something else at that time.
Yeah. So one of the things I'd really like to, as we kind of start to wind down our conversation, that I think is really important, and that is mental health.
Yeah.
And it just seems like it's, and anxiety, and we're all, in fact, Carol and I were talking earlier today, and she didn't mean to say it. We were talking about mental health, and she said mental hellness instead of mental wellness. But it's kind of true,
Yeah.
that So I know that we're all, and I know you're not a mental health expert, but I know you've got a lot of insight. And so what insight do you have that might, glean some wisdom for each of us? Because I think we all have a degree of mental dis-ease.
Yes. We're all experiencing real collective trauma right now. And, I think for some of us, this has brought mental health to the top of, the list for us to really acknowledge. Maybe, we haven't done the work up until now. I had been, what's interesting for me is it's like I had felt like I had been doing some of that deep inner work and attempting to look in the dark shadows and identify the past trauma that I'd experienced, even just at a small level of growing up. And by the way, we all experienced trauma in some shape or form during our childhood. Even if you had beautiful, perfect parents that were married, it is inevitable. And so doing the work to try to heal that trauma and identify how it has created patterns that show up in my life and in my relationships today, and feeling pretty good about having done that work. And then COVID, something massive hits you and you get an opportunity to really put those tools to work, put the practice to work. And I think that's the word, is that you have to have a mental health practice. It's not one thing that you can do. It's not one book you're going to read. It's not, having a therapist that you go to a handful of times. It is an entire practice. And
Or
you
it
have
could be,
to,
or it could be all of that.
it can be,
It
it
could
can
be
be
all of that. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It is. It's, when I say a practice, it's like a professional absolutely may be a part of that equation for you. Mm-hmm. And I think we're in a place now where for the first time, like the stigma attached to that is completely gone. Like everyone knows that you need that, and it's supportive. So you may have a professional, you may have hopefully a community of a few people that you can lean on and that you can talk to. And then you have to have some routines, rituals, and habits on a daily basis that fuel you and that help set your day up for success. There are things that I know that I can do, even if I don't want to do them, that will shift my state, right? Motion creates emotion. And it will take me through, it will pull me through challenging times. One of the frameworks that I've sort of leaned into over the last 2 months, I love the Stoics. I'm a big fan of Stoicism. And there's a particular phrase from the Stoics called amor fati. And what amor fati means is love of fate. And it essentially is this idea of not just accepting and being accepting of what has occurred, right? Because it's like I surrender to this situation. It's outside of my control. It's not about acceptance. It's can I shift to a place of saying I love what is happening right now? Can I love the fact that the pandemic crushed my business? Can I love the fact that these government restrictions and city restrictions are forcing me to rethink this salon? Can I love the fact that, I'm writing a book and the manuscript got lost because the computer died? Why? Because I know that it is all serving me. It's all forcing me to evolve into the next highest iteration of myself. And it is not easy. It's the most difficult work that we could possibly do. But in the words of the Stoics, it's like the alternative is death. The alternative is not an option to languish in the suffering. I choose to look it in the eye and to say, I love it, to lean into it and shout it, amor fati.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And as as a practitioner, when you say you have to love all, it's that's even when it's like, okay,
I know.
I'll have to really wrap my head around and my heart around loving all of that.
From acceptance, most of us have just tried to get to that place of like, can I come to a place of acceptance? Can I slip into a space of it's surrendering the outcome, focusing on the controllables, but that next step of like, I love it. Give me more of it. And I can, we almost always in hindsight can look back at some of the most challenging, painful moments and be like, it was a defining moment in my life. It helped me evolve into this version. It helped me heal myself. It helped me acknowledge certain things. It improved other relationships. While you're in it, it's hell.
Yeah.
But if you knew that
And what you're addressing when we talk about mental health and trauma, that's exactly what we all have to do with any trauma that we experienced when we were younger. You know, you
Yes.
have to look at it as in a way that refined who I am today.
Yes. Yes.
And take it, you know, like those were my, you know, even the people that, you know, they were my teachers.
Yes.
So in wrapping up, what would you advise or coach the leaders on how to support and continue to develop and really engage their staff that is obviously suffering with anxiety and what words of wisdom would you have for us as leaders in dealing with, you know, and supporting our people?
So I'm going to share with you, there's a piece of research we're looking at right now around just leading change. So how that might be manifesting and playing out for people watching is there some behavior change that I'm trying to get my people to embrace? I need to get my people to move from here to there. And it's this framework of 3 F's, you know, because we resist change. We're hardwired to resist change at a fundamental level within our DNA. And so in order to help people get past that, the 3 F's are first and foremost labeled frustration. And what we want to do as leaders is that we want to help identify the frustration of the current situation for people and zero in on that so that they feel the weight of that. It's like, I'm frustrated with this, and the frustration helps to drive me to take action, right? So 1 is frustration, 2 is future vision. So I'm frustrated with the current state, but my job as a leader now is to paint a ideal, better, improved situation, future state, future vision. And if you can't do that, then it's like you have zero chance of being able to drive and shepherd change. So I pinpoint and isolate the frustration. I communicate a future vision. And then the 3rd F is first step. Then I have to be able to show them the way of what is the first actionable thing that they can do to move towards that new vision. One new small thing that either they can do individually or that we can do collectively. And those 3 things then will outweigh the resistance that we're experiencing as a leader trying to get them to move in that direction. So I don't know what that change in behavior is that you're trying to accomplish right now, but thinking in terms of those 3 F's, pinpointing the frustration, I can lean into that with those people. Vision, future vision, what's that look like? Clear and compelling. And then the first action step that they can take, those 3, boom, we're off to the races.
That's great. That's you always get. I could probably talk to you every week and glean some new insight. I love this, and thank you so much, Seth, for again, you know, your generosity with your time and your wisdom, and we really we are grateful and value the relationship that you share with us and with us as an industry. So
I'm humbled and honored. Thank you for the chance.
Yeah,
you know how much I care about you and the group, and I just wish everybody the best. And if there's ever anything that we can do to support you on your journey, we're always available to you.
Thank you so much.